Hello friends, welcome to the class of Engineering Economy. In these lectures, we will be discussing some of the very basic concepts of engineering economy and how the tools of engineering economy is applied for evaluation of engineering projects. So, to begin with, let us first see how we define the term engineering economy. Or rather, in more general word, what do we mean by the term economy? In general, economics is a science related to, rather we can say it's a social science concerned with the production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. It studies how individuals, businesses, governments and nations make choices on allocating resources to satisfy the needs and wants of the society. So that is basically the general definition of economics. So if we just extend this economics to engineering economy, it simply means that this principle is basically applied for taking engineering decisions. Simply we can say that engineering economy or engineering economics is a subset of economics which is basically concerned with the use, application and use applications of the principles of economics in the analysis of engineering decisions. Now the second question which is important is, why do we need to study this engineering economics? The answer lies in the fact that with the help of this subject, one can understand the need for the knowledge of economics for being an effective manager and a decision maker. So mostly as an engineer we have to make certain decisions. So some decisions we are making in terms of finances. So whenever finances comes into picture, the decision making will be based on the principles of economics. As far as the application area is concerned, it is widely used in decision making like selection among alternatives, evaluation of engineering projects, deciding upon the production volume and many other phenomena which involve some kind of optimization related to resources. So this is how we define engineering economy. Now the thing is, when this economy comes into picture, so if we see a broader picture, what do we have? We have a manufacturing unit which is manufacturing certain types of goods, and whenever this good is being sold in an open market, there is some kind of transaction in terms of money. So whenever this money exchanges hands, the economics comes into picture. So let us first see what are the different components of this economy which are continuously interacting. The first among this is the goods. So goods is simply which we are exchanging in terms of something. So whenever we are exchanging this good, we can classify this good into different varieties, we can say. Like for example, a good may be classified whether it is a necessity or a luxury. Simply if we just differentiate between the two, we can say that a necessity is that particular kind of good which is required for one's survival. That means for our living we need that kind of good. This includes fruits, vegetables, grains and all such needs which we just require to sustain life. However, a good can be classified as a luxury item which is not necessarily required for sustaining one's life, but this is something to improve the social economic status of an individual, like for example owning a car. However, in some cases, depending upon the geographic location, depending upon the economic strata, depending upon the GDP, depending upon the country, whether it is a developed one or it is underdeveloped, the definition of these necessity and luxury, it might change. Some of the luxury items might fall in the category of necessities. So this is one classification. Another classification is we can classify goods on the basis of whether it is a substitute or it is a complement. Just to differentiate between the two, a substitute, as an example, a substitute good is, say for example, a medicine. A medicine which we generally take when we have some fever. So paracetamol is there. If paracetamol is not available, we can have different brand names like Calpol, like Crocin. So if Calpol is not available, one may take Crocin. So the main advantage is that if certain item is not available, alternate to this item is readily available in the market. Like for example, mobile service providers. We may have Airtel, we may have Reliance, we may have Idea sometimes ago. So we have, if we are not opting one, we have a choice to choose a different one. So the thing is, these kind of goods falls in the category of substitute. One may replace the other. Similar is the case with cars. We have different brands. We may opt brand 1, we may opt brand 2, we may opt brand 3 depending upon our needs and the finances available. Similarly, complementary goods is nothing but the sale of one is being affected by the other. Say for example, if there is a large sales of 4-wheelers, then automatically the demand for tires will increase. The demand for plastics will increase, the demand for steel will increase because these are the components which we require to manufacture this car. So indirectly, the sales of these raw materials is basically governed by a finished product, that is a car. So this kind of goods is categorized as a complementary. So this is one such classification. Apart from this, we may classify goods into inferior good or a normal good. So generally, inferior good means the good which is any good which is not having a very good quality. Normally, when we have a higher purchase power, the demand for inferior good it get reduced. However, normal good is the one which don't have any impact on the demand with respect to the price change or with respect to wealth of a particular person. So inferior good is the one for which the demands gradually drops very abruptly if we have higher. So like for example in this slide you can see we have two brands. One is Coca-Cola and another one is Figo. Figo is a brand which is not very well known brand, or rather we can say we have a lower quality brand. So if we have a higher purchase power, we don't go for Figo brand, rather we will prefer Coca-Cola. So in that sense, Figo is basically an inferior good. However, the same good, that is the same good that is Coca-Cola falls in the category of a normal. So this is again one such classification. Then apart from this, we have one more classification, what we call as a producer good and a consumer good. If you look at this slide, so what we have bread which is readily available in the market. So that is basically directly consumed by the consumer. But if we really go into its inside, how it is being manufactured, so all the ingredients, all the components which are required to produce this bread falls under the category of a producer. It might include these fields where this wheat is being produced and all the machinery required to harvest this wheat and then convert it into a bread. So producer good, which is required to produce consumer goods, and consumer goods is nothing but which we are directly purchasing from the market and consuming. Now with this classification, just think of whether it is a producer good or a consumer good, whether this is a substitute or a complementary good, or whether it is a necessity or a luxury, how do the demand of this good varies with price. So this is an important question which we need to answer, that we will take up later. So because on the basis of the answer to this, that is how the price varies with demand for the different kind of good. This also helps in classifying the good into these various classes. Now, once we have goods available before us, now in order to sell or this good, what do we require? We require a place where we can sell this good so that we can give it to the relevant buyer and we can get money out of it. So that place is basically known as a market. So we define market in a very simple term. It is basically a place where a willing supplier and a buyer interacts. Or we can say that market is a place where two parties can gather to facilitate the exchange of goods and services. That is how we define market. A market do have different conditions. What are these conditions? Say, the very first condition is that, say for example, for a particular type of good, we have only one supplier. Few years back, whenever we are purchasing laptop or PCs, we are forced to buy an operating system. We don't have many choices available for that OS. Most of us, they are opting for Windows. So that means we don't have any choice to select from. Or rather, there is an external agency, or there is some forces which are compelling us to buy from a single supplier, Microsoft, in case of Windows. So that kind of condition where we have only one supplier for a particular good, that kind of condition is basically characterized, or what we call as a monopolistic market. So its characteristics are one seller and many buyers. And the main difficulty with this kind of situation is that the seller sets the price. The buyer is not having any control on the price because no second option is available to him or her. So that kind of market is known as a monopolistic market. Apart from this, we may have a market where we have number of buyers supplying the same kind of product. Say for example, purchasing a laptop. We may have HP, we are having Dell, we are having Apple, we are having Samsung. There are so many brands which are basically supplying the same kind of product as far as the functionality is concerned. So the customer is free to choose any one among them. So this kind of situation is known as a perfect competition. And this perfect competition type of market condition, it is characterized by goods being sold which are almost the same. Both the buyer and the sellers, they can negotiate, or they are basically price takers. If say for example I am interested in purchasing a laptop of under 50,000, I am having a choice for that. If I am interested in purchasing the same laptop but a better quality extending to say rupees 70,000, I may have that option also available. So depending upon my criteria, I am having a flexibility from which supplier or from which manufacturer I may buy the same product. Similarly, apart from these two, we have a condition which is in between. This in between conditions where we have few sellers and there is not much rigorous competition. And generally the sellers get together, all of the sellers which are dealing in the same product, they sit together to decide upon the price, and almost the price is same. For example, if I am going on a highway and my car fuel indicator shows that the fuel needle shows empty tank, so what will be my reaction? My reaction is that whatsoever petrol pump will come first, I will get into it and get my tank filled. Whether it is of Indian Oil, whether it is of Hindustan Petroleum, so it doesn't make any sense. So whatsoever supplier is there, I am going and just filling up my tank. So that is, although we have many other petrol pumps in between, but the condition is such that I am forcing that whosoever comes first, I will be getting my tank full from that very petrol pump. So that kind of condition is known as oligopoly. And the characteristic of this kind of market situation is that the price is almost same from the different suppliers. Like an excellent example of this is the petrol pump. So almost the prices are same whether we are buying from an Indian Oil petrol pump or we are buying from an HP, Hindustan Petroleum petrol pump. So that is the case of oligopoly. To understand this concept of different types of markets, The thing is, basically it is a continuum. That means every point on this line is basically representing a kind of market condition. On one extreme, we are having a perfect competition type of situation. On another extreme, we are having another type of market situation, what we call as monopoly. As we move from this to this, the number of suppliers gets reduced. So here we are having high number of suppliers, high number of manufacturers, what we call as a perfect competition. And as we move from this point to this point, the number of suppliers or the number of manufacturers get reduced, and in between the two we have many other situations depending upon how many number of suppliers are available in the market. So oligopoly is there and monopolistic competition is there. That means we have some number of suppliers which is more than oligopoly but less than what we are having in a perfect competition type of market situation. So these are the different types of markets. So first thing is we do have a product. Second thing is we are having a place where we can exchange this product in terms of in terms of money or in terms of certain currency. Now apart from this, for every product there is a cost. So whatever profit is being generated depends upon what is the manufacturing cost incurred into it and at what price we are selling it. So the question arises here is that how do we fix the price of a particular product? So to understand the pricing of a particular product, let us see the different types of costs which are incurred while making a particular product. Generally speaking, the costs, they are divided into two categories. One what we call as fixed cost, another what we call as variable cost. Fixed costs are those costs which are incurred just once, and basically they are independent whether we are operating my plant at 50% capacity, 30% or 100%. Whatever is being incurred, that is being gone. So the thing is, whenever the cost is independent of the production quantity, that kind of cost is known as fixed cost. As an example, say for example, if I am constructing a building, so whatever incurred in constructing a building, that is basically the fixed cost. Fine. But once a building is constructed, say for example a family starts living, so the consumption of electricity or the electricity bill is basically a variable cost. Fine. It depends upon how many numbers of persons are living in that building, what is their usage. So in that way, the electricity cost depends upon. Another example, say for example in a manufacturing plant, whatever is being incurred in constructing that particular factory or a workshop, whatever is being incurred in purchasing the machinery, all that will contribute towards fixed cost. But as far as cost related to raw material is concerned, cost related to power consumption is concerned, cost related to labor is concerned, it all depends upon how many quantities we are manufacturing. Higher the quantities, higher will be the cost. So that kind of cost which depends upon the production volume, they are termed as variable cost. Generally, material cost, power consumption, labor, if we are hiring and firing the laborers on the basis of requirement, then these kind of costs, they will fall under the category of variable cost. Just to summarize, cost independent or cost which is not a function of production volume, that falls under the category of fixed. And whenever the cost is having a relationship between volume of production, those kind of costs will fall in the category of variable costs. So all the costs we can classify into these two categories. Now we have costs for a particular product or a particular good. We have a market. Now whenever an economic activity is taking place, that means a willing buyer, a willing seller, they are interacting at a place what we call as market, and they are negotiating, or maybe the supplier is dictating the terms and conditions depending upon which kind of market is. What we have an economic activity whenever there is an interaction among the buyer and a seller. The decision-making units in an economic activity are three. One is the firm. Firm is basically converting the resources into some output which is useful for the society or which can be directly consumed by the society or by the household. So that is basically what we call as a firm, because it is basically a manufacturing plant or an organization that transforms resources into products. Firms are the primary producing units in a marketing, because economy or exchange of money only comes into picture when we are making something and selling it. An entrepreneur is the one who operates this firm. So basically an entrepreneur is a person who organizes, manages and assumes the risk of running this firm, taking new ideas, making a new product and turning that venture into a successful business by generating profit by giving employment. So an entrepreneur is basically responsible for running a particular firm, and it is the entrepreneur whose policies depends upon whether the organization will flourish or not. And finally, the third decision making unit are the end users, what we call as households. They are basically consuming what is being produced by the firm on the instructions, on the policies of an entrepreneur. So when these three are the basic things which plays a critical role as far as the decision making in any economic activity is concerned. Now, we have a good, we have goods, we have market, we have decision making units. Now let us understand, or let's answer a very basic question, that what should be the quantity of good which I should produce as an entrepreneur. So for this, it's what we call this as a demand. We call this as a demand. So to understand demand in economics is the consumer desires and the ability to purchase a good or service. So demand is what I am interested in purchasing. Say there are 10 persons who are interested in purchasing items which I want or similar items which I want. So that is basically the demand. Because demand, why demand is important? Because demand basically it is the decision making, or it's a decision. The decision is to be made by a manufacturer that how much quantities are to be produced. Because overproduction is also detrimental, underproduction is also detrimental. So the thing is, the very first thing is that to initiate any economic activity, one must know that what should be the demand of a particular product which we need to produce or manufacture. So demand in economics is the consumer desires and ability to purchase a good or service. It's the underlying force that drives economic growth and expansion. Without demand, no business would ever bother producing anything. So the business only operates once there is a demand. So the very crucial thing here is how to determine demand, or how this demand is being used as an input to any economic activity. So, and for this, let us understand what the demand curve is. So demand curve is a graphical representation of the relationship between the price of a good or service and the quantity demanded at any given point of time. So that is basically a demand curve. What we do have on one axis, we do have a price. On another axis, we have quantity. So here in this case, on X we are having quantities, on Y we are having price, and what quantities are required at a particular price. So that is plotted here. So this is basically a demand. Obviously, say for example, if I put up a question before you, say for example, if the cost of iPhone falls down to say 10,000 rupees, what would be the impact of this on demand? Obviously your answer will, the demand will increase. So that is the relationship between price and demand. That is, whenever the price of any commodity falls, the demand for that commodity always increases. So here if you see, when the price is falling, the demand is basically increasing. So this is how the price and the demands, they both are correlated. Now, as far as the demand is concerned, you may say that there are certain products, even if there is an increase in the price, the demand is not reducing. Say, for example, those goods which are required to sustain life, say flour, rice, bread, even if the price is high, there is not much impact on the demand. So that kind of demand is known as inelastic demand. If you see here, there is a price change, but as far as the change in demand is concerned, it is very less. However, on the other hand, if there is a vast fluctuation in the demand with respect to price, then that is known as elastic demand. Ideally, this is the case of perfectly inelastic demand, and this is the case when we have perfectly elastic demand. It is a line horizontal to x-axis. That means the demand the demand increases at the fixed price. So this is ideally the case when we have elastic demand, and this is the case that the quantities remains fixed irrespective of the price. So this is the case with inelastic demand, ideally. And this is the realistic case. There is not much change in the demand with respect to price. So we say that this is inelastic demand, and where there is large fluctuation in demand with respect to price, then this is known as elastic demand. Now, on what factors this demand depends upon? There are so many factors. Some of them I have listed here. Like, for example, the very basic thing on which the demand depends is the price. I have already told you, say for example, the price of an iPhone falls down, say under 10,000 rupees, then the demand will increase abruptly. So the very first factor on which the demand depends is the price. Apart from this, we have many other factors like income available to the household. Higher the income, more will be the purchase power. Higher the accumulated wealth, more will be the purchase power. It's a different case whether they are buying it or not, but the purchase power exists. Similarly, another factors, they include the price of related goods. Say for example, if I am going to select a service provider, so Airtel and say Jio, if the price are not comparable, then I will always opt for the one which offers me a lower price. Of course, the feature remains the same. So the price of related product is also important in governing the demand. Apart from this, the household taste and preferences. Say I am a die-hard fan of Apple. So irrespective of many other things, it's always my preference that I'll go a product manufactured by Apple. Similarly, another factor is expectation about future income, wealth and prices. Say for example, nowadays if I don't have the accumulated wealth, if I don't have the income available, even then I can purchase a car by taking a loan with the condition that I know that in future I will be able to repay this loan. So these are some of the factors on which the demands depends upon. Now there are two things. One is demand, another term is quantity demanded. So we'll see the differentiation in the coming slide, but just to give you a very brief overview, quantity demanded is the amount of the product that a household would buy in a given time period if it could buy all it wanted at a current market price. I'll elaborate this in the coming slide, but let's see what is this. Say for example, if this is a typical demand curve, we have price, we have quantity, and this is the demand curve which shows a very general behavior, that is whenever the price falls down, say for the price P1, the quantity is Q1. Now if the price falls down to P2, the quantity becomes Q2. Of course, Q2 will be higher than Q1. So the thing is that with decrease in price, my point A is shifting to point B. So this is one situation. So this is when the price is reducing, the curve is basically shifting from one point to another. There are many other factors which we have discussed, like accumulated wealth, similar cost of similar products available in the market, future condition of my household income. There are many other factors apart from the price. So if we take those factors into account, rather the shifting will not be like this. The shifting will be like this. We say that this is the shifting of the demand curve. This is the shifting of the quantities demanded, and this is basically the shifting of the demand curve. So quantity demanded, they get changed whenever there is a fluctuation in price. But apart from price, if other factors are coming into picture, we say that the quantities demanded, they are also changing, but that is because of the change in the demand curve. So this is the change in the quantities demanded, and this is the change in the demand curve. Price is responsible for this change, but apart from price, household income, accumulated wealth, economic status, competitors, all other factors are basically responsible for the change in this demand curve. So if we just summarize, there is a law of demand which states that the quantity purchased varies inversely with price. That means when the price of a particular commodity is higher, it will experience a less demand, and when the price falls down, the demand will be higher. In other words, the higher the price, the lower the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and vice versa. So this is known as the law of demand. So this is all about the law of demand. In the next lecture, we will see the law of supply, and when we superimpose these two, what will happen. Hope you have enjoyed my lecture. So in our coming classes, we will be discussing some more basic concepts. Thank you very much.